How's it going out there, YouTube? My name is Jesse, and I am the curator for the Golden Age, and this is another...
Lost Heroes of the Golden Age.
Yes, this is Lost Heroes of the Golden Age, and this time we are doing one that I've been wanting to do for the entire Arrow month.
The Golden Arrow.
Yes, we are doing the Golden Arrow.
The one from Far Out Comics.
Wait a minute, what are you talking about?
The Indian from Lone Ranger.
You know damn well that that is not the Golden Arrow I'm talking about. Anyways, besides what DC and Timely might have been putting out, this is probably one of the longest running archers that has been out there. And I think it came out at the proper time because it's a kind of a cowboy themed, and it comes out in the time of the Old West. And as superheroes were fading out and westerns were becoming more popular, Golden Arrow was able to slip right into that genre because he wasn't a superhero and he did do things that were part of the Old West, despite the fact that he was an archer. I mean, no duels at sunset or anything, but he dealt with cowboys and Indians and, you know, gold rush and arms dealers. Everything that you would associate with the Old West was an aspect of this comic book in some way. Now, there are a lot of issues. I didn't read all of them. I read a number of them and went over some of the other ones. Now, despite one of the issues taking place in what would have been considered modern time for that comic book, I think that was more of a joke than anything else because all of these stories take place in the Old West. So let's go ahead and review what I think is one of the more unique archers, despite the fact that he never used any trick arrows or anything like that. He was pretty intriguing in his own way. So let's go ahead and cover the Golden Arrow out of Fawcett Comics. The Golden Arrow. Golden Arrow, Roger Parsons, first appeared in Wiz Comics number 2 in 1940. The original publisher is Fawcett, and he was created by Bill Parker and Greg Duncan. I might have mentioned Bill Parker before. The Golden Arrow is interesting in the fact that, despite the fact that he's not a superhero, he does have strength, speed, durability, and stamina above those as a normal person, and he developed these in the upbringing that he had. And now all of this was going to be explained in the first issue. It flushes out and defines the character that he is. Now, the Golden Arrow rides a horse called White Wind that sometimes has a saddle and sometimes doesn't. And he is an expert archer, and maybe even in ways that other archers weren't at the time. Some of the shots that he makes are just amazing. Now, he does appear in almost every issue of Wiz Comics starting at number 2. And if you've seen any of my Captain Marvel videos or where I've gone into them, you know why Wiz Comics starts at number 2. As I said, he's in almost every issue. I found an issue that he wasn't in. And even though Wiz Comics stops doing comics in 1953, that wouldn't be the end of the Golden Arrow comics. He actually has his own self-titled comic that starts in 1942 and ends in 1947 with 6 issues. Yeah. There is 6 issues printed out in a 5-year span. And when they end in 1953, that will be the same time that issue 2 comes out. So issues 3 through 6 would come out after Wiz Comics was done. Why it took like a year per issue, I'm not sure. And the 6th issue is actually called Golden Arrow Westerns. They were capitalizing on the fact that he was an Old West hero, which was pretty popular back then with cowboys. So that might have been why Golden Arrow may have had a farther interest than some of the other Fawcett characters at the time. Now, one of the things that I don't quite understand is the time frame of the Golden Arrow. Now, everything suggests that he is an old Western hero. He rides the horses, there's no electricity or power, everything's done by lamplight or candlelight. There is no cars, no planes, no trains, no automobiles. Everything's are done by covered wagon, wooden houses, and large open wide western plains. And they do this to an amazing degree. But it comes into contention with Wiz Comics number 43. In this issue, Captain Marvel actually travels to Wiz Comics because he needs to have them stop something because he's teaming up with the Spy Smasher. When he gets to Wiz Comics, the floor that they're printing the comic books, the Golden Arrow and Ibis the Invincible are in the Wiz comic book editorial office, which would suggest that with this comic book coming out in 1943, that's where they exist. Which is, I don't understand that. Every other detail of the Golden Arrow, even the Golden Arrow story, in the same issue where, Captain Marvel is going to Wiz Comics, he's in the Old West. So I think that they're trying to make a joke, because I don't think Ibis the Invincible follows the same chronological order as the Captain Marvel comic books. So the timeline is completely skewed. You can see here where I've shown you him there. Now, the Golden Arrow is basically what you would see as a gunfighter, but as an archer. And his arrows are actually made out of solid gold, which seems to be an unlimited supply. There are times where he fires arrows in areas where it would not be easy to retrieve. I never see him pick them back up again, yet his quiver is fully stocked. Now, despite being faster, stronger, more stamina, he has gotten knocked out and held as a prisoner on occasions, and through the fact that he is better, stronger, harder, faster. Yeah, I know, I sound like Daft Punk. He's able to get out of these situations and stop the bad guys. And the bad guys vary. Cowboys, con artists, Indians, whatever just happens to be the antagonist of the day, he as the protagonist stops it. Now, he's not part of a newspaper or reporter or anything. It seems large in part that he stumbles upon these situations and he helps out the people and stops the criminals. He doesn't want to kill them if he has a choice, and he mostly turns in the bad guys to the sheriff office. When it comes to the Indians, that's a little bit more catchy. You can't really turn them into the sheriff because, well, that's the way Fawcett was representing them anyways. And it's kind of interesting, every single Indian is dark skinned, which is just a horrible stereotype, but pretty par for the course in the golden age of comic books. So, that's just a basic rundown of who the Golden Arrow is. He had a fair amount of popularity. He never owned any of the covers of Wiz Comics, but he did appear on a couple of the covers also in this issue, as we've seen, which is very common in the Golden Age. So you would know that Golden Arrow is a part of that issue. There's a lot of index pages on a couple of these comic books where they're telling you which story is on which page, and sometimes he would appear on those index pages. That happened for a lot of the heroes. But Yeah, he's basically a gunslinger in arrow form, which is probably the appeal because he wasn't another gunslinger. He was an arrow slinger. So let's go into the first issue, which pretty much defines the entire character moving forward from there. And then you can basically see what they started with and what they pretty much, I mean, a lot of heroes change over time. They become someone different, they change things, they move things. He pretty much stays standard from how he was created to where he ended. So we're going to go over the first issue, and you can see what the concept of the Golden Arrow was and what they did moving forward. Here's an interesting fact. With the Golden Arrow's appearances in the beginning, he had a sporadic copyright renewal issue, so a lot of his stories did appear in the public domain. In fact, his appearance on, issue 2, issue 7 through 14, because he wasn't in issue 15, and issue 16 through 60 were all public domain appearances. So was his appearances in his Golden Archer. The ones that they did have the copyright renewal for was 3 through 6 and 61 through 154. So, yeah, he's in the public domain, and at the same time, he's not. Golden Arrow. One summer, a few years before the First World War, Professor Paul Parsons, a brilliant young chemist, finally perfects a new gas which he believes will revolutionize lighter-than-air transportation. Non-inflammable, easily manufactured in huge quantities at small cost, it has far greater lifting power than any gas thus far developed. That is our Golden Arrow intro. I got it at last. I had thought that this was helium at first because helium is non-inflammable and lighter than air, but helium at that time was not easily manufactured, so this might be like a variation of it, but yeah. Alright. To prove the great power of the gas, Professor Parson builds a huge balloon in which he intends to make the experimental cross-country flight with his beautiful young wife Gloria and their year-old son Roger. If the flight is successful, he plans to sell the secret formula to the U.S. Army. Yeah, let's go ahead and take an experimental flight with your entire family. I mean, you don't know if it's going to work, you don't know if it's going to be successful, and you don't know if your balloon is going to spring a leak halfway through. It's perfectly acceptable to take your wife and year-old child on an experimental flight. Anyways, there's actually papers talking about this. The Daily Time, it's like Daily Time, Daily cross-country balloon flight will test secret formula gas. It's really nice of this newspaper to crop the headline so we can see it, even though the entire paper isn't displayed. Okay, a huge crowd gathers and they watch him take off as he's going to make his journey from the Atlantic to the Pacific. I hope that thing has enough food for a flight like that. It's not going to be an overnight flight. And judging from the capsule, it doesn't look that awful big. Fighting strong headwinds, the gas bag makes steady progress across the United States thanks to a secret maneuvering device which Professor Parsons has invented. I mean, all of this sounds great, but it's not going to play any part into the rest of the story of this one, or stories moving forward. So as they're going, they see a hideout. What a strange place for a castle. And this is Brand Bardock Outlaw's ex-munition maker spies the balloon from his $3 million ranch house. Hold on a minute. So the converter calculator says that's worth about $61 million plus today. So it's got to be grand. All right, so they command him to shoot down the balloon because he knows about the flight from the papers. That's great, Professor. Let everyone know what you're doing so they're easily tracked. And he knows that the formula is in the balloon with him. That is quite an assumption. So they shoot down the balloon. See, this is the exact reason why you don't take your family with you. All right, so the balloon falls and crashes. The terrible impact kills Professor Parsons and the wife instantly, but by a miracle, the baby escapes unharmed. Yeah, that is a damn miracle, because the crash kills 2 people and the baby survives. Okay, so as they're investigating the fact that the balloon went down, a mountain lion prowling nearby sees the baby, picks him up, and starts to run away with him. Hey, we got a Jungle Book scenario going. Okay, then there's this guy over here. He's going to turn out to be a prospector. Skin my hide if that varmint ain't got a baby in its mouth. Nugget Ned, the gold prospector's paused the line. I'm sorry for the voice, but that's just how I picture him sounding. Okay, so he shoots down the mountain lion to save the child, and he decides to take him to his shack. Nugget Ned takes the baby to his lonely cabin outside the limits of the Bran Bardock's huge ranch. Leaving the child in the cabin, always a good idea. The prospector backtracks along the trail left by the mountain. So that's what happened, the murdering thieves. So, let's see, Bran Bardock, they find the crash. They take the lockbox with the formula in it, and then they bury the 2 members of the the wife and the professor, and the balloon. I mean, they had to have dug quite a pit. Let's see, horrified, Ned watches while the men bury every trace of the balloon and its ill-fated occupants. Well, that's the end of that. Nobody will ever know nothing about the accident. Yeah, let's vamoose. This place gives me the creeps. Well, yeah, the ghost of the wife and the doctor are obviously haunting the place now. Alright, so he takes the baby and he starts to raise him, fearing Bran Bardock's swift vengeance on himself and the child if he tells what he knows. The prospector decides that night to raise the orphan boy as his own son. Abandoned search for lost balloon. No trace found of the Parsons flight. Scientist, wife, child believed dead. Searching parties give up hunt. I mean, I know after a certain amount of time you would give up the search, but for how much publicity was surrounding this launch and about what was going on, I know it says weeks pass, isolated from the world. Nugget Ned knows nothing of the hue and cry which hurled the balloon disappearance. Okay, weeks have gone by, they've given up the search, but with as much publicity as surrounding this, you would have thought that there would have been more of searching everywhere. I guess they just went to bury it, they didn't leave any evidence. Okay, so here's where we start seeing the boy getting raised. Raised in the healthy outdoors, the child develops a powerful physique. At the age of 5, he wrestles a bear cub and pins it to the ground. At 7, he is remarkably fleet of foot. Once he races after an antelope and catches it. At 10, his eyesight surpasses an eagle. From a towering cliff, he counts the fish at the stream 1,000 feet below. How? Good Lord, how? I doubt being raised outside is going to give you exceptional eyesight that is better than an eagle's. Please explain that one to me. I can somehow see the physical physique and the speed, but dear God, explain the eyesight. But his greatest ability is with the bow and arrow. Once at a distance of 100 yards, he decapitates a rattlesnake about to strike Nugget Ned. Another second, hold on. Okay, I want to throw shade on the fact that he's making an accurate shot at 100 yards, because the farther the arrow travels, there is all sorts of factors that goes into that. Gravity, wind, the curvature of the earth, all that stuff factors into it. Now, I know modern bows and arrows could probably shoot around 200 feet, but I'm doubting that a bow and arrow from the 1940s is going to go for 100 yards. But we'll go under the suspension of disbelief, but that one just seems completely inexplicable. He decapitates a rattlesnake. That's about to strike Ned's... Yeah, that's not the first time he decapitated a rattlesnake, too. That's happened more than once. Okay, Nugget Ned has little need for gold, he finds, and so the boy used it to make arrows. The Indians whom he can outshoot named him the Golden Arrow. So that's where he gets the name of the Golden Arrow. It comes from Indians. At 18, Golden Arrow is a superb horseman. One day, he spies a magnificent white stallion, leader of the pack of wild horses. So, leaping onto the stallion's back, he resists the plunging animal's fantastic efforts to unseat him. Now, in many of the issues, there is no saddle on this horse, but the horse does have reins, and you can see the reins on the head. Don't you need a saddle to be able to firmly fasten reins? I might be mistaken. Despite the fact that I'm born in Texas, I really don't know a whole lot about horses, I'll admit. But I think that you have to have the whole saddle to have reins. If I'm wrong, okay. Under his master's firm and gentle training, the great stallion becomes the fastest and mightiest horse in the West. Golden Arrow names him White Wind. You train the horse to be faster. Not going to question that. We'll just go with it. Nugget Ned is an old man now, and one afternoon he has a heart attack. Don't worry, Dad. You'll be all right. And as he's on his deathbed, as we see in the Golden Age, dying deathbed convention, and they can bid out all sorts of exposition right before they die. I'm dying, son. There's something I gotta tell you. On his deathbed, Nugget Ned tells Golden Arrow how many years before Bran Bardock cowboy shot down the balloon and stole the gas formula. Your father's name was Parsons, Paul Parsons. Bran Bardock murdered him and your mother. I just love the amount of exposition that people can get on their deathbed in the Golden Age. It's truly remarkable how much more they can say when they're seconds away from death. For the first time, Golden Arrow learns his real name, and a few hours later, the old prospector dies. A week later, Golden Arrow rides in search of Bran Bardock. Did you grieve for a week? Did you make more arrows? There's such a gigantic gap. Okay, so he gets there and he says he wants to see Bran Bardock. The guard tells him to go away, so he starts to ride away and jumps. Hold on. The reins on the horse, but no saddle. Weirdly, suddenly, Golden Arrow urges White Wind towards the 10-foot wall. The powerful horse clears it easily. Really? 10 feet. Hold on again. Your average horse can jump to about 3 to 6 feet. The world record is 8 feet. This horse easily cleared 10 feet. A 10-foot wall, he easily clears. The suspension of disbelief is one thing, but I'm not believing that a horse easily cleared a 10-foot wall. Oh my God. Horse and rider ride towards the ranch. And then I'm assuming that this is Bardock right here. He's old. He's old man. Years ago, a friend of mine gave me this secret gas formula worth millions. I have saved it for you boys. I understand the story needs to happen now because that's the way stories work. But why did you wait so long to sell this thing? I mean, the boy was a baby at the time that you got the formula, and he's got to be, what they said, 18 is when he got the horse. So you were holding on to this formula for over 18 years before you decided to sell it. What in God's name were you waiting on? If this thing was worth a fortune, worth millions, it would have been worth millions 18 years ago. I understand that with the blimp disappearing, you needed to let some of the heat die down before you decide to sell off a formula because it would have looked awfully suspicious. But 18 years? 18 years is how long you decided to wait to sell this thing. No. 2, 3, 4, maybe waiting a maximum of 5, but 18 years? This is the Old West. There was no guarantee you were going to even live that long. I could have sold it during the last war, but I held on to it. With another war going on, you get any price you... No. Still, you tried to give you an explanation. I don't buy it. Because that formula came out before the first war. You could have made millions then. I don't buy your explanation. You would not have waited 18 years. Okay, they call me Gold... who are you? They call me Golden Arrow, but my real name is Roger Parsons. Never heard of you. What do you want? I want the formula you stole from my father, Professor Paul Parsons. It's a lie. Get him, Bronk. Bronk. It's a comic book based on the Old West, and your henchman is called Bronk? Oh. There are so many other names that would have worked so much better. Okay, so we see the guy going for his gun, but before he can, before he can squeeze the trigger, the golden arrow knocks the revolver out of his hands. Throw up your hands, all of you. Unseen by the golden arrow, Brand Bardock, which is also just a horrible name, presses a secret button summoning his cowboy henchman. Okay. If you weren't an old man, I'd settle with you myself for murdering my father, but I'll let the law handle it. So his cowboys arrives, and quickly he whips around and pins the first cowboy to the wall by the trousers. He unleashes a beautifully aimed arrow, which nails the leading cowboy's chaps, that's what they were called, to the door jamb, and all the other cowboys are trapped because the first guy is trapped against the wall. Glad to have met you boys. You'll hear from me again. Before they can scramble on their feet, the golden arrow has reached the open window. White Wind was waiting for his master. He still has the reins on. Okay, so they start to shoot at him, and he goes for the wall, clears it again with a mighty leap. I cleared it the first time, might as well clear it again. A few days later, the newspapers carry a sensational story. Let's see. Mysterious donor gives gas formula to the U.S. Army. Experts hail find foresees new era for dirigibles. Oh, dirigible. That's what that says. Letter accompanying gift in memory of Paul Parsons is signed Golden Arrow. May be lost scientist. Son. Oh. I actually didn't read that part last time. A few days later, newspapers carry a sensational story. Okay. We'll go ahead and read this whole last panel here. I think my father would have wanted me to do that. No, your father wanted to sell it for millions. I think my father would have wanted me to do that. Be sure to read next month's smashing adventure of the Golden Arrow exclusively in Wiz Comics. Yeah, he's pretty exclusive to Woods Comics. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoyed Archery Month. I know this one came out a little late for the month. We started a little late for the month as well. But I hope that you did enjoy this. We're moving into timely months. If you have any that we haven't covered yet, you're more than welcome to drop a line. I like seeing requests. If not, I got my own and timely put out a lot of characters that I still haven't covered yet that I want to. And then we'll be doing DC month right after that. So until next time, I'll be seeing you.